Hey everybody, thanks for coming. This is the Operator Framework SIG meeting. I should be sharing my screen, which has the agenda. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess to kick us off, Daniel, if you're here, I think the governance model update would be first. All right, well,
I don't
yes,
see.
Daniel.
I'm happy to give a quick update as well. In short, we merged it. Everyone, I'm Jared Dillon. I'm one of the chairs for over on D2IQ for the project. So we got everything merged in, and I think there's it's all set up. You can go look at the PR. It's also now in master under governance.md if you're curious about how that process will work. And that's all from me. Daniel might have more, but just letting everyone know the status update at least.
Does somebody want to do the CNCF proposal update?
Hey, this is Rob. I think what we're waiting for is to get on the TOC agenda, and I think we need to bump this with whoever compiles that agenda. I think we're in agreement from the SIG that we should have the opportunity. We've already talked to them once, so I think it was more of like they've elected some new members, and so we just need to figure out which of those folks need to hear more information, which are overlap with the presentation we already did. So that's an action item after this meeting for sure.
Cool. Oh, that reminds me, we've got some notes going. If you're here, please add yourself to the attendees list, and for any action items, go ahead and add them. Right. Next is me. KubeCon EU. Jason Dobies is going to be doing an operator workshop and could use our help if any of us are going to be there and know our way around some operators. It would be a good way to expand some community. So if you're interested in that, hit me up after and I'll set you up with the right people. Also at KubeCon EU, there's an OperatorCon event, which is put on by a separate company. I think it's Ludzi. And it would be really good for us to go out there and support them. And if we could get an operator SDK talk, that would be especially good. And again, hit me up afterwards and I'll set you up with the right people if you're interested in doing that. We update on Operator Hub. Anyone?
Yes. Hey, Austin, that's Daniel. I think I wanted to do this last time already, but I did. But I wanted to show you something that we've done in the preview version of the site, which is available under dev.operatorhub.io. So I'm quickly going to share on my screen if that's possible. It will kick yours, Austin. So
go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you see operatorhub.io and
Yep.
with creating your operator package? Awesome. So
yes.
This is not released yet, but we'll look to stages fairly soon. So it's in dev operatorhub.io if you care to try this out. That's publicly reachable. So before on the site, we had the ability to basically support you package your operator right with the UI. So the idea is you give us your Kubernetes manifest, making up the operator, and we basically scaffold out as much of the bundle that is that's possible. So and the rest of the bundle you would be basically able to complete with a graphical editor, which has all sorts of linting rules and validation rules and semantic checking enabled. So a little bit better than editing all this YAML in your text editor and then only see it fail when you try to actually build a catalog. So this editor is based on the package level or the bundle level, right? So that's one version of your operator. Now, what we actually do have as of today is this format here in our community repository where there's the definition of a package, and then all the versions that belong to the package, including the past history of that, is like in the folder structure underneath it. So a new version of the package editor can actually operate at that level and can allows you to visualize also the relationships between the different versions and their channels. So what you do is you would, if you are not starting from scratch, but you're starting from an existing operator like this one here, CockroachDB, you would be able to go here and say, create from existing package. So a package is basically this structure, right? And then you would be able to say, go upload this, and then you could give this a location in a GitHub repository. It doesn't have to be ours, can be any. And then you can say upload, and hopefully this works. And it will basically import all those files, right? And we'll try to make sense out of that. So you see it actually parses that and tries to see, is this belonging to an operator package? Is this something we understand as part of the structure that we have? And you can also see what's inside those folders here. So this is a fairly simple operator that's created off a Helm chart, only has a single CRD and the cluster service version and the package definition, which basically holds the name of the operator and the different release channels, right? And then you click create, and then you get a graphical representation at the package level, right? So you see here, this package has exactly one release channel, which is called stable. And it has 3 operator versions in it, like 2.11, 2.1.11, 2.1.1, and 2.0.9. And you see also the update path that is built between those versions as it is described in the individual CSVs, pointing back to each other. So you can use this just to visualize that you did the right thing in defining the update path, but you can also actually add a new version of that operator, should you have just released a new version. Let's say this is 2.1.12. Oh, it's actually asking me for the name. So, yeah, okay. Just confirm once I leave the field, and then you have a new version, and you can actually make that the default version right now, so the newest one, and you can start editing the update path and select this replaces, for instance, 2.1.11, right? So you get an updated, representation of that, and then as usual you can go into each version and basically edit the number, or you click on it and you then are bounced back to that editor experience we had before. So the gist of it, you can now edit the whole package, right? All the versions that you ever had or that you want to make part of that release artifact in a graphical way, which should further reduce toil and aid you in doing the right thing and give you validation. As you see here, there's something missing in there or something invalid in that version that I would need to fix. And I see here it's something to do with the metadata and also something with the deployment. So this is missing a display name. So I would fix this here and then would, as soon as I'm done with that, be able to download this as a complete zip file, which you are then able to import, create a catalog out of. So I can't do this right now because there are some errors in here which I would need to fix. But once I fix these errors, I can actually download the zip file, and this is exactly what you are contributing as a PR to us, right? And from that, we build the catalog that is known as the community catalog. So hopefully helping you create vetted stuff faster and with less back and forth in terms of why is this erroring out, what am I missing here, what do I need to enter there. That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, super cool. I'm assuming that the import from GitHub, the demo that you did, it's expecting the versions to be immutable, and so that's just a question there. But the follow-on to that is, what happens when additional versions are added in underneath that tree? Is it possible to refresh that as opposed to import it? Does it know how to manage those details?
I don't think it is able to refresh that as of today. So I think it's actually a good question. I'm not 100% sure what would happen if I just do this again. And let's say I would have added something here. Maybe this is an additive operation after all, and I can just do this over and over again and get this refreshed. So that didn't give me an error, so interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't
maybe
trying to
just
find flaws. I was
maybe.
trying to understand the extent of things. It's great.
Yeah. I think in doubt you would just start from scratch, re-importing it completely. So you would say here clear all, start new package, and then you would do this one more time. But
Good point.
we haven't in particularly tested that flow. Maybe this is worth testing. I don't know.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, that was my quick update on Operator Update.io. You also see we have quite a bunch of operators in now. We are over 100 operators, so that's cool. And yeah, they keep coming. So great work, everyone.
So before we move on, Daniel, we started off with the governance model update, which we just mentioned that it was merged, and there's a location. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I don't think I had something in particular, and this was something we wanted to do for a long time, and DPR was open for a long time as well. It's eventually also needed for our acceptance in the CNCF, that we have a governance model, and yeah, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's almost the same as the OKD working group, which is an established open source upstream community. So shouldn't have any surprises in there. But yeah, I guess you've shown the location, right, Austin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, any changes to that or any improvements, then you would basically file a PR, right? And we would have the known process to vote on that.
Cool. Do we have any questions on the governance model? All right, very good. Rob, update on operator framework?
Yeah, I don't have too much to talk about here. Just each project is kind of continuing to move on. The main thing that we're, as we mentioned, was the CNCF donation is the kind of the main thing holding up some of the work is regarding where's like Operator Hub going to be hosted long term and like all that kind of stuff that's kind of blocking work on that property. And so we're just trying to wait on that. Hopefully we get the TOC vote here soon. And then starting to get the SDK towards a 1.0, and then get the governance in there, which is a great step to forming a more formal process for the community involvement. So we've got a bunch of folks on the call here from a bunch of different organizations, which is awesome. Love to see that keep going forward. So yeah, not much to report there, other than we'll have a presence at KubeCon. As was mentioned, we're doing an operator workshop, as well as has some talks at the OpenShift Commons event, which is a day 0 event, so taking place before. Then I'm not sure if we're giving any actual KubeCon talks this year, but every year there's been more and more operator talks, and it's just been growing from folks outside of CoreOS and Red Hat and other folks involved, so it's really great to see. I don't know, Daniel, if you have anything else to add to that, but I think it's just cruising forward per normal.
Yep.
All right, up next is the Operator SDK update with Joe, who's not here. So if somebody on the SDK team has an update, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll move on.
I guess I can just quickly talk about where we are with the Queue Builder integration. So for those who don't know, the SDK team and the Queue Builder team are, or I guess the both communities are working on a joint effort to implement a plugin system for Queue Builder, which allows other projects to use Queue Builder's Go scaffolding and hopefully streamline contribution to Go scaffolding efforts for controllers and operators in general. That work is going pretty smoothly. The phase 1 implementation of this, which is just creating the plugin system and encapsulating Queue Builder's current project logic in different plugins that other projects can import. Phase 2 involves combining plugins in command invocations, which a proposal should be up for that in the coming weeks. So if anybody is curious about what that looks like, there are 2 PRs, or 1 PR that's currently open, one that was merged in Queue Builder. Just search for plugins in the pull requests search window, and you can take a look at that. Yeah, so that's basically all that's been going on with the Queue Builder and Operator SDK integration. Other than that, I don't have any other updates to give.
All right, OLM update. Daniel, maybe?
Yes, we are navigating the agenda in an agile way. One thing we could potentially start to give you a little bit of a sneak preview about is some work we are doing on the way you are actually moving all these operator bundles around, right? So let me actually go ahead and share my screen again. So as I've shown you so far, we have essentially like this on-disk format, this nested directory-based approach where you have your package definition and then in each subfolder a version with all the files that make up the operator from a metadata perspective. So specifically all the CRDs and the cluster service version, right? And that needs to somehow sit somewhere to be reachable for OLM in order to build that catalog, right? That graphical view that we see in operator hub.io, but also inside graphical consoles like the OpenShift console. So we had a backend for this used in OpenShift that we are now deprecating in favor towards a more standard-based solution. And the standard-based solution is going to basically take all of this and throw it into a non-executable container image, right? So we are using container images as a transport mechanism for this metadata because that's some stuff that you can easily create and ship around and sign and download and make known in Kubernetes-driven environments. So you're seeing the first signs of that in the operator registry repository. So this is not fully released yet. We are still working on this, but the basic approach is already outlined here, where you have a very similar approach on disk, right? Where you have a folder with the name of your operator and a subdirectory called manifest, which is where all the usual metadata goes, and an annotations YAML. And from that, we are actually able to build a non-executable container image. So a Docker file for this could, let's see, where's the example for that here in the documentation? Nope. Here in the bundle design. So this is on the operator registry repository of the framework org, and you see we have this structure here, and we are able to basically say we built all of this into a Docker or into a container image, and that constitutes an operator bundle, right? So something that we had no term or no container for in the past is now becoming something that you can move around and, more importantly, store on any container image registry that is out there and is current. So what this will give us is two things. So it will enable us to use a standard backend to host custom catalogs, and by the way, also our own catalogs, like the one that is brand operator hub.io or the ones that Red Hat is shipping for OpenShift. And it also enables everyone who's capable of running a container registry to host their own catalogs as well. Now, we had a solution for this before, but it was not quite scalable, and it was also not something that we had a good UX around. So what we are doing now is we allow you to build these bundles. That is one bundle per operator version. You can store them on a container registry. And then in order for something like the operator lifecycle manager to make sense out of that and create a catalog, there's the concept of an index image. So you can really draw the analogies between RPMs and YAML repositories here. So the bundle is kind of the RPM, right? That contains all the things that you want to install. And then there is some sort of index that indexes many collections of these RPMs and allows them to be viewed in a package manager. And that's exactly what OLM is doing at this point, right? It has the notion of index images that can be built on the fly from a collection of those bundles. And the index image is, again, another container image, and that is what OLM can then use as a catalog. And in order to create this index image out of such bundles, which are just plain containers, right, which you can build from a Docker file, we have a utility called OPM, the Operator Package Manager. And that's something that roughly compares to what create repo was in the RPM or YAML world, right? So it would basically scan a location of bundle images, typically a namespace in a container registry, and would create an index out of that. And that index is then something that OLM can talk to as a catalog, right? And you are obviously able to update this index as new bundles are showing up. So this OPM binary has several subcommands in order to do that. And it essentially is able to use an existing index and incrementally add bundles as they come in, which lends itself obviously very well to do this in a CD pipeline, right? So we've sort of released this in a first drop. It's not like productized fully yet and completely integrated, but it is out there, and it's something we're going to transition towards to, just to allow everyone to run their own catalog and curate their own catalogs, host them in an internal container registry that is not connected to the internet, stuff like this. So maybe you want to have a look at the operator framework / operator-registry repository to get to know more about this and like follow this proposal for updates and the repository in general.
I'm super excited about this because I think there's two use cases that are really awesome. One is like doing local dev and testing upgrades and all that stuff on a cluster that's on your laptop or something like that. Makes it really easy to do that. And then if you are an organization that's building a bunch of custom operators, you can curate those and ship them out to a bunch of clusters without having them be public and be on Operator Hub if that's not what you want. So two really powerful things I think are going to be awesome.
So quick question on when do we think this will be ready for prime time? Is this like a 4.5 kind of thing, or?
Yeah, sort of. So like middle of this year is like our plan to do this. I mean, upstream the tuning is probably most likely going to be finished earlier, but like this is the time frame when you're going to see this in the productized versions of OpenShift.
Okay, so it is a 4.5 thing or not yet?
It is a 4.5 thing.
Okay, cool. And then I guess one other related question, are you going to have the capability to kind of install an operator from a bundle directly? Is that something that's in the works?
Yeah. So that's definitely the plan. So the catalog is just an index collection of this, but we will also have the ability, and you can see this in the designs on the OLM repository already, to just take a bundle and install directly from that. I mean, this will only work if your bundle doesn't have any dependencies and it contains everything it needs, basically. Otherwise, you would still need to have a catalog somewhere in OLM to pull in those dependencies. Yeah, that's the plan. You will basically be able to install this from a bundle.
Would that be with a new resource type, like of operator versus a cluster service version? Is there something going on in that space too?
Yes, but the team actually also implemented this in the current API set. So we have this concept of a install plan, right? That basically is or drives the installation of an operator on cluster, and that thing understands operators that come from today's backend implementation, but it also understands how to actually work with a bundle, right? So in fact, the new object that you're talking about will be introduced in parallel with the existing API set. So you have really like a smooth transition into this new world, but you can also keep using the older or the initial API set that we have. But it's going to be based on those bundles and index images.
Is that a 4.5 thing too?
Yeah, that's a 4.5 thing.
Okay, thanks, Daniel.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, Department of Defense.
Yeah, I think this is a carryover from last time. Daniel did have me, or Diane, I think, had me talk about this last meeting. But yeah, we're very interested in the CICD improvements that come from what Daniel was just talking about. And yeah, that process is moving along on our side. Definitely interested in all the improvements that make running our own registry easier. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so on the community side, we'll obviously need to get the community pipeline up to speed with this new format and creating these index images. So this might take some time, and technically it could take even longer than 4 or 5. But yeah, obviously our goal is to have that up to snuff as the stuff is ready to go in G8.
Case spec.
Yeah, this is Chris. Actually, we talked about the case spec last time we met, and I guess I've had just some minimal feedback on that. So if people want to look at that, they could replay it, ask me questions directly.
Very good. I'm moving these over into the done category. Update on the operator registry new packaging structure.
I think that's what we just talked about.
That's okay. Yeah.
Also.
Review and update Kubernetes client. Jeff. Or was this from last time?
Sounds like a new one to me, but
yeah, I don't think he's here. We'll leave that up for next time. Next one as well. All right, compostable. I think we already gone through that as well.
The composable SDK. So this is something that we covered in the operator SDK community meeting. I don't know if people wanted to review that again here.
Sure. Maybe a brief summary.
Sure. So let me just oops. Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the composable operator is something that we originally, contributed to Operator IO, and the idea there was to allow other operators to have the ability of having cross-resource references. So rather than having everything be hardwired in your YAMLs, what we wanted to do is to be able to specify pointers to other resources and have the facilities of resolving those references dynamically. So after you deploy an object that has a pointer, at that point, the pointer can be resolved. And the composable operator at the heart of it had something that we call composable SDK. And what we've done is to do a PR on operator SDK so that these utilities can be available to anybody that's building an operator, so that they can give the ability of having pointers in their YAMLs instead of hardwiring every value. So the composable SDK, and so we've had actually a lot of discussion on that PR. People have been very receptive to it, and I'm just going to summarize what it is that it would be contributing. So first of all, on the type side, you have the ability of having an object ref. So when you're defining your schema for your YAMLs, you can have an object ref that say where the value should come from. So we say get value from, and get value from here is a composable get value from type that will specify the kind, API version, name, etc. of the object that one is pointing to. We also have format transformers, so that if you're pointing to an object that's of a slightly different type, that the kind of data that you need, you can actually pipe these format transformers together to get the right format for your data. And the composable SDK actually provides a series of format transformers as well. And then what we have is for the reconciler inside your controller, there is a resolve object interface that has a resolve object that is actually implemented by this struct that has a resolve object function. So inside the reconciler, once you have used this type of reference in your schema, you can then call a resolve object function to get the value for that particular reference. And so the way this works in your reconciler is that when it's presented with an object that has a pointer or several pointers, it's going to try to resolve the entire object. If it gets a resolution for the entire object, then it will move forward with whatever it is that it needs to do. And if at any point there is some kind of error that occurs during the resolution, because maybe the object that's pointed to doesn't exist, or the data within it doesn't exist, then the resolution returns an error, and at that point your reconciler will have to figure out what to do. And so we also provide a series of functions so that you can figure out what is the nature of the error that's coming out from the object resolution and be able to deal with it accordingly. So if people want to learn more, we have a tutorial here that goes into detail about how to take the memcached operator and replace the size here field inside of it with a pointer to some other object, like a config map that would have that information. And then it shows you how you would modify that memcached operator so that you use the composable SDK in order to get this ref to be dynamically configured. Okay, that's it.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And any questions?
What is in the operator that's not in the SDK that's getting merged in?
So the operator itself is something that actually wraps other operators. So it has a template. So when you look at the operator, the way that works is that it has a template that it then wraps other, YAMLs from other objects. It can wrap any other object. And so if that object hadn't been, designed in such a way that it has pointers, the composable operator makes it so that you can take any field of this thing and turn it into a pointer. And then what the reconciler for composable does is that it takes the template, tries to resolve it, and then then creates the underlying object. So it's made for people who don't have like the facility for having pointers designed into their operators. It makes it possible for you to have pointers in such cases as well. So it can basically wrap any object out there that was not designed with pointers in mind, and makes them amenable to this kind of dynamic configuration. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts around what happens when this template changes? Like if the Kafka operator or the Knative operator decide they add a field or something like that, or remove a field, how does this cope with that?
So what the composable operator does is that at every reconcile cycle, it actually resolves the object, and if that object has changed, it then issues an update to the underlying object that it created before. So it's truly being sort of dynamically updated. And same thing, like if I went back to for the composable SDK, if I go back to this this memcached example, so here we have an example where we replace the size with a pointer to a config map. If I actually change the the information inside the config map, then this memcached object would change as well, and whatever deployments this is governing would change as well. The updates would get propagated. So it's truly making things dynamically configurable.
Very cool.
Yeah, I really like the proposal, I have to say. So really hope we can see some of this soon in the SDK. It's just so handy to be able to actually refer to an object with a pointer rather than waiting on something external to inject the values in. So that's really good.
Okay, thank you. And so one thing I'm wondering is that, is there anything on my plate that needs to be done in order to make the PR move forward?
I need to take a look again, but I think like the SDK or like the project maintainers need to iterate over it maybe one more time and see how exactly we'll integrate it. But I think no one doubts how useful this is.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions on that? All right. The Dask operator at Capital One. I don't see Alexander Perlman in the meeting.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right. Then we can. All right. Ansible operators update with Chris Short.
I don't see him here either.
All right, then the next one's mine. Basically, I think that we need another venue for communication. I think we need some developer mailing lists for Operator SDK and for OLM. That way, the discussions that we're having, just in person, like in little meetings, we could make it a little bit more open and more inviting for everyone to contribute to. So I've got two suggestions here: Operator Framework SDK Dev, Operator Framework OLM Dev. And if there's a general agreement, I'll go ahead and pull the trigger and make that happen before the next meeting. If for some reason somebody doesn't think that's a good idea, we can take that discussion to the user mailing list until then. Any thoughts?
Seems reasonable.
Makes sense to me.
Cool. Can I get a +1 at least, so I'm not crazy? All right, some +1s in the chat. All right, I'll do that. We have a similar thing for Slack. I think that there's a fair amount of communication that happens in Red Hat internal Slack, and I think that we should be moving that over into a public channel. So here's some suggestions for what those channels should be. This one, I'm going to let it sit for a little bit because I would like these choices to be a little bit careful. So I'll just leave this as an item for next meeting. But if you've got any opinions on this, let me know.
I guess you want to see these in the Kubernetes Slack.
Yes, that specifically in the Kubernetes Slack and not the CoreOS Slack. All right, very good. Well, that is all the stuff that we've got for today. I discovered this morning that you need GitHub permissions to add agenda items. So if you have an item for next meeting, feel free to email me. I'm austin@redhat.com, and I will add it for you unless we can come up with a better solution. Right, and I will be posting the link to this recording in the notes. And I hope everyone has a good month. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.